Nachi Cueing is a way of removing specific frequencies from generally production tracks as part of a dialogue cleanup process. A really good notch EQ is the FabFilter ProQ 2. You're generally going to choose the mono one because production audio is almost always in mono. I opened it as an audio suite, but you can also open it as a real-time plugin as well. For now, we're using the audio suite. If we take a look at the interface, down at the bottom, you see the frequency spectrum represented, 20 hertz, 20,000 hertz, all the frequencies in between, and this orange line represents the gain. Right now there's zero gain at all frequencies. If I were to click here at, let's say, 100 hertz, I could push up, so that means I'm raising 100 hertz and some other frequencies, or lowering about 100 hertz and some surrounding frequencies. And of course you can adjust things like the bandwidth, so you can affect more or less frequencies, adjust the gain, and adjust the frequency. So right now we're going to talk about Nachi Cueing. As I said earlier, Nachi Cueing is the process of removing specific frequencies that are causing noise in a production track. The ProQ allows you to have almost an unlimited amount of EQ bands. Sometimes when you're cleaning up dialogue, you do have a number of frequencies that you're going to be reducing, so having an unlimited number of bands makes that extremely useful. The way we initiate a band of EQ is by double-clicking on this orange line. You'll see the interface for the EQ pops up. For our Nachi Cueing, we're going to use Bell as the EQ type. If I click on that, you'll see a whole number of other types you can choose, notch being one of them. And this is what it looks like. The issue with the notch setting for what we're doing is it doesn't allow us to raise the frequency, and that's how we're going to be finding the frequency before we cut it. So we're going to use the bell setting. The bell allows us to raise or lower a frequency. The other switches you want to look at on this interface are this here, which is a bypass switch, and that allows you to shut that particular band off. So if you have 10 different bands of EQ going and you want to just disable one of them, you can click that and that'll bypass that one band of EQ. Below the EQ type switch that I mentioned earlier, you have a slope switch. It's a good idea to start at 12 dB and listen to others if you feel 12 dB isn't working well enough. Next to that is the frequency dial, which allows you to select frequencies. You can also click and drag, like I'm doing here, or you can use the dial, or you can use the scroll on your mouse. That's what I'm doing right now. So that's frequency, and that controls the frequency that you're going to be affecting. Next to that is the gain knob, and that determines how much gain you're adding to a particular frequency, or how much gain you're taking away from a particular frequency. So if I raise it up here, we're adding about 9.2 dB of gain. You can see also represented on this scale here. Or if I lower it here, now we have 13.39 dB of gain reduction for that frequency. Next to the gain knob is the Q knob, which is also the bandwidth knob. If I raise it, you'll notice the bandwidth gets very narrow. If I lower it, it gets very wide, meaning right now I'm affecting this frequency here, 104, but a lot of other frequencies around it. If I raise the Q up, now I'm not really affecting any other frequencies except for 104 and maybe a little bit here, but not much at all. That's the Q control. Next to that, this little number here allows you to switch between bands. If I had 3 or 4 bands, by clicking this I could click through each one and access the controls for each of those bands. Next to that is this little X, which allows you to delete a band of EQ. If you click on it, the band disappears. So it's something you only want to click on when you really need to do it. And this switch up here allows you to adjust the vertical scale of your gain display. Generally, you should keep that at 30 dB so you can bring the gain all the way up, then all the way down for Nachi Cueing. At the bottom of the plugin, because this is an audio suite plugin, we have a preview button. Bypass button is down here, and this will bypass all the bands as opposed to the individual band bypass button. This is a volume for your preview. Sometimes when you're doing audio suite filtering, you might want to raise or lower your preview. Here is the meter. Here is where you would select the length of the handles, handles being the little bit that's hidden behind a clip. When we re-render a clip, remember, we replace this. So by specifying 2-second handles, it would allow you to drag 2 seconds more out. If you had 0 handles here and you render it, you can't drag that clip out. 2-second handles, render it. Now I can drag this out up to 2 seconds. And of course the render button, which allows you to render the clip.